And I was also definitely in a state of shock. I was absolutely overwhelmed and I couldn't cope with the situation. And then there was this moment when I was coming out of my body. So I was above the scene and absolutely relaxed. I was able to look down from above and there was this peace and silence. I was able to see what was going on down there, but I didn't make any judgment about it anymore.
Miss K, as a teenager, you had experienced the light that a lot of people tell us about after having had a near-death experience. How old were you at the time and what exactly happened?
Well, I was 15, not quite 16 years old. I had just started going out with my best girlfriends and we had found a club that played music in the afternoons and early evenings. We really liked dancing and I had met someone who was dancing with me, and after a while I was invited by him to come outside for a moment. I was young and maybe you could call it a little careless and reckless and went with him. And then it came to a situation that didn't develop in a positive way. It came to a sexual assault. It went as far as to a point where I was in terror and fear to die right there and then. And because I couldn't get any air to breathe anymore, I remember thinking that I'm not going to survive this. And I was also definitely in a state of shock. I was absolutely overwhelmed and I couldn't cope with the situation. And then there was this moment when I was coming out of my body. So I was above the scene and absolutely relaxed. I was able to look down from above and there was this peace and silence. I was able to see what was going on down there, but I didn't make any judgment about it anymore. I was in another dimension.
What happened then?
I was trying to get a grasp of where I was and to get some orientation. So I looked around. And I saw the roofs of the schoolyard buildings and registered that they were filled with gravel. I looked at them with interest and that seemed fascinating for a while. I also looked around some more and I started to receive some pictures of my life. It was mainly about situations where someone was getting hurt, situations about justice and injustice. Most of them happened at school. That was pretty quickly done and over with. And then I was looking up and it was dark, it was March and after 6 p.m. so it was dark already. But I saw a light. There was an opening that was round and totally bright light came out of it and touched me completely. It touched me visually, but at the same time it touched me emotionally. It was as if I was flooded with it completely. I was also able to recognize beings that were talking to me out of this light.
It wasn't just an optical visual effect, it was touching concerning your feelings as a whole person.
Yes, it was as if I was flooded with love.
And that took you away completely from the negative scene that had happened.
Yes. But actually, it was like that from the moment I was outside of my body. I was already then taken away from it completely. And then I felt pulled towards that light. I also had the impression that I was able to navigate as well. I felt attracted to the light, as well as pulled towards it from the center of my heart. It was a tremendously attractive and fulfilling feeling. Filling me with immense happiness, and I didn't want to go back at all.
What was the impulse like to go back?
I had received messages from the beings inside the light that were communicating with me. By the way, there were 3 of them, one bigger one in the center and 2 smaller ones next to it. It was obvious that they had faces, but it was a bit misty, hazy, and vague. I have felt or heard within me the message that I am blessed and loved, but it's too early for me to come here and that I should please go back. There was a sting of disappointment, but I did go back. And I remember that I was moving backwards, but I have no memory as to how I entered my body.
What happened then here on Earth? You did go home. How were you able to sort out what had happened to you?
I was there with friends who were looking for me and calling me and have found me. We went back to the tram line and rode back home, and I tried talking to them about it, but apparently I gave them the impression that I was a little disoriented and dizzy. At home, I didn't talk to my parents. I had a room downstairs, my parents were upstairs watching TV, and I went straight to bed. And I must have completely shut down that experience from my memory. Essentially, all of it, the sexual assault as well as the encounter with the light. I told my mother the next day that someone was harassing me and that I had defended myself and fought him off.
As a light version of the story.
As a very light version of it. And I also believed that myself. I am convinced that this was the way I was able to deal with it, because it's actually pretty hard for a 15-year-old to go through something like that. When my 2 daughters had been at that same age, I was just over 30. I gave birth to my children very early in life. I insisted on them attending a course of self-defense for girls. And when one of my daughters came home from that course, she wanted to show me how she can switch from shyness to self-esteem. First, she was standing there in a typical girly pose, and then she took her feet apart and posed in a self-confident manner and really yelled at me. That actually caused my memory to come back. It was even a physical experience. A real jolt went through me. It came from the bottom of my body and all the way to the top, and all of a sudden, most of the memory of that evening was back in my mind. And for the first time, I looked at the situation and I wanted to know what had really happened.
So you have been living with a fake memory of your past for 15 years of your life?
Exactly.
Remembrance is said to be a process of building and reconstruction of memory. Did it happen quickly and everything that was forgotten was there in short time? Or was it a longer and ongoing process, picture by picture?
First, it was that truth that it had happened totally different from what I had thought. I was able to recollect it all physically. I experienced recollections of my memory concerning smell, taste, and other physical sensations, as well as the pain in my body. It was as if my body had released the memory. That was not easy to deal with. For some time, I couldn't eat and I kept coughing. It felt like a cleansing process. And then I started to talk about it. I have told my husband bits and pieces of it as well, because I had to explain why I was feeling so bad. And then all of those puzzling pictures started to fit in together. And the more I was able to look at what those memories were all about, the more I was able to recollect my memory of the encounter with this light. That had a lot of direct effects on me. It felt as if I was experiencing this perception of light for the first time. It has caused a lot of optimism within me, and I started to talk in a totally different manner. I started to talk about my rights, and I was a lot more enthusiastic about life. I was suddenly starting to find solutions, and I was also a lot more happy in conversations, and I was able to stand my ground a lot better. But actually, the people around me were quite puzzled what was going on, and why I was changing into someone more confident so rapidly.
With your recollections, you were able to actually relive the whole encounter with this light once again.
Yes, I also think that this was the first moment in time when I actually realized what I have been told during that encounter with this light.
You are talking about your own encounter with this light in a very reflective and aware manner. How did this process of becoming aware of this experience change you personally?
In the beginning, the change was immense, and it became less and less over time, but it didn't stop. There were always coming back further details on and on. I realized that I could ask questions and that I can also receive answers. I started to become interested in religious beliefs, and I questioned my own religion. For instance, if it is the right one for me. And I was absorbed by a lot of religious topics and very much into finding out more about them. I was very astonished that the communication with the other world was working so well for me. And more I started to put a lot of trust into it. I was also in therapy. But just regarding the sexual assault, I didn't talk about encountering the light. I have actually only been able to tell people about it for the past 2 or 3 years. I just once mentioned pretty unexpectedly that I can feel God within me, and that alone has caused a lot of irritation and astonishment.
In the scientific research on near-death experiences, it is well known that people all over the world have reported that they had encountered a light. Is it important for you not to be the only one with this experience?
I am very happy that I am in contact with other people who have had similar experiences. I also read a lot about it as well. To know that other people have had near-death experiences and have encountered this light is unbelievably relieving. And to have the words for it, to describe what this experience is like, is also unbelievably relieving. I feel like talking about this topic is very helpful and a big relief and support for me personally. And that is why I have an urge to talk about it as well. I am very happy and very much interested in finding people who can deal with this whole life-changing experience.
And as you mentioned before, in your therapy sessions, your out-of-body experience was not part of the topics that were examined then. Why not?
I knew that I had been outside of my body, but I would have never dared saying so. Because I had never heard anything about such thing, and I was also partially questioning my own perceptions. And how should I have said that? How should this be possible after all? I would have never dared talking about this, because I was afraid nobody would believe me, and I also had doubts about my own perception as well.
You have become aware of things that you have not been aware of for a very long time. Have you ever tried to verify any of your memories?
That's what I have done right away. After the flashback of those memories, I went back to see the place where it all had happened. I absolutely recalled everything about the surroundings there. I also have asked my friends who were with me that evening, and they remembered me before and after the out-of-body experience. They were also able to verify that I was pretty dazzled and disoriented afterwards. And then those pictures that I had received about certain situations at school, I have been dealing with that as well. I went to see the people, or I have arranged meetings with people that I had seen in those pictures of my life, just to clear up situations or to talk about things that should have been said. I also had a strong urge to say thank you. I wanted to put things right, and I wanted to let them know how thankful I was. And I have tried to find out who this person was that I had this incident with, and I was successful in that way too.
So you know now who it was?
Yes, I do.
People with near-death experiences report that their attitude towards religion has changed very much. What about your experience? Has your attitude towards religion changed?
I was christened evangelic, but this is just what I have been born into, so to speak. I wouldn't say that I was too impressed by the formal teachings. It was always a little irritating to me. But after my encounter with the light, a lot of it made more sense. For example, the 10 Commandments are logical and seem important. So a lot of it suddenly made sense. But the official church was a different story. I didn't have the impression that the way it was taught and lived nowadays is coherent to the origins of it. The origins seem good and something I could agree with. I started to get interested in other religions because I was trying to find another religion that would possibly suit me better, but I didn't find any. I do go to church sometimes, and I am fond on certain prayers and songs, but the official church seemed strange. I also feel like I have been given a certain wire and connection that goes directly to the other side.
Strange because of too much dogma and too little suitability for someone who has had an encounter with this light that you have experienced?
Too restrictive. I believe that was not meant to be taught like that.
According to your own experience and your own perceptions, what is, in your eyes, a human being? What is the meaning of life?
I think the best way to put it is we're spiritual beings having a human experience. I believe that we come from the light and that we come down here to learn and then we go back to the light afterwards. I can't prove it, but that is what I believe.
Life as a learning process?
I believe that it is important to have all kinds of experiences, also the bad ones. I think it is part of the game and very important to go through this stuff in order to become more mature.
Are you looking at the encounter with this light as a central part of your experiences during this maturation process?
Absolutely.
Are you thankful for having had the experience?
Yes, absolutely.
Were you able to dissolve all the bad things that had led to this experience? Were you able to forgive?
I do think it was a very difficult experience, and I believe it's not possible to work through something like that very easily and quickly. But as a whole, it was something that had been very important for my life, and in some way I have been able to forgive.
A lot of people are very much afraid of death. That's one reason why it's such a taboo subject. What is death in your eyes?
I think there will be a salvation. I believe that death is the liberation from pain and that we must all go through it.
Nothing to be afraid of?
No, not at all. And I also think that we are guided through the process.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us, and all the best for you.
Thank you very much.